welcome to the Mo podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
Mo, a place for me, others, everyone. Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Mo Podventures podcast. So we are really excited today to be welcoming Alex and Kat, who are going to be having the most stimulating conversation about the flexibility of a location when it comes to coaching, how a radical diary can sort of change your perspective on how much time you have in the week. As always, we talk about the uniqueness of coaching and how different people structure their businesses. We'll go way back to her humble beginnings in 2010 when she first experienced coaching, and some of her top tips on getting started as a coach, how to build that client base and how to help people live deliberately. I hope that you really enjoy today's episode, and do let us know if you've found something that resonates with you by contacting us either on our socials or via email. We'd love to hear from you.
Now we welcome Catriona Horey onto the podcast after her and I have got our best animal noise icebreaker out of the way. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I was slightly nervous you were going to make me do that on air, but it was certainly a good warm-up for us, so it's good to be here.
And for everyone listening, Kat's animal was originally introduced as a gorilla, ended up being like, oh, or is that a parrot? And mine was a sheep, but you'll have to ask us if you ever get us in person or on call, because it's not going to come out on the podcast now. So, Kat, tell us a little bit about who you are without referencing a job title, your age, or your relation to anybody else.
Ooh, that's a good question. So not age, not job titles. So who am I? I'm a curious soul. I think I'm someone that's pretty kind. I enjoy delighting in the world. I enjoy nature, beauty, diversity of people, travel. So I guess I'm someone that's quite just likes exploring, both with individuals, groups of people, but also, the world itself. It's an interesting question when you take away relationships, because I'm very used to kind of explaining myself in that way, so I won't do that. Age is fine to leave. Things I enjoy as well, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, I joined a community choir in Battersea. It's the Battersea Power Station Community Choir, and that is giving me so much joy in life. Every week I go, I just come back full of joy. It's brilliant. I help reception-age kids learn to read at local school. Love Pilates. So, I guess those are some things about me. Is that the kind of thing you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we've got a real insight into who you are and where we might find you in a typical week. And with that personal introduction out of the way, well, not out of the way, lovingly shared, give us an overview of your portfolio career as it is in this moment.
In this moment, so I would say I work part of the week, like half of the week, and I do other things half of the week. So Mondays I'm very lucky to have off, and in that time I do some sport, and then I also go and see people in person. And I think after the pandemic, and just my character, I've really missed seeing people in person. So I go and have coffees with people, particularly people I haven't seen for a while, or people I've never met. Maybe I've just met online, just to kind of learn about what's going on in their lives, but also what's going on in the world. I've spent the last 5 or 6 years with small kids, and so it's nice to kind of really hear what's going on now in the world. And then Tuesdays to Thursdays I work. And I work as a leadership and life coach. So I'd say in terms of that, probably 75 to 80% of that is with private clients. So they are typically people who are looking to redefine their personal and professional priorities, and then embrace that new chapter that they want to embark on. So there's also the leadership side of things, which is usually working with people in organizations, helping them to think about how they want to be as leaders, and then actually helping them do that. So it's both the being and the doing. Those tend to be people involved with social innovation, with the environment, charities, social enterprise, schools. And I've also had some more kind of typical corporate clients as well. So I'd say the majority of my work is coaching. I do some facilitation from time to time, some training from time to time, and also co-host a podcast with a friend called Unfurling, in which we look at random topics from economics to patience to beauty to language, but through the lens of the natural world. So I think at the moment that's what I'm doing with my work time. And then Fridays, I'm very lucky that I get to spend that with my 4-year-old. So he's off to school in September, so that's in 6 months' time. And so I've always enjoyed that time anyway, but I'm really cherishing it right now because I know that it's finite.
Good. Brilliant. Thank you for that overview. And if the coaching happens Tuesday to Thursday, would you elaborate a bit more on how you structure your week, or who you've consciously chosen to configure that work week? Yeah.
Well, it's something I've had to learn how to do, and having I've got 2 small boys, one's 6, one's 4, and that's really actually helped me be much more boundaried about things. So I remember when I started coaching, I still use a paper diary. I think it's a wonderful tip I had from a coach once, that have a big A4 paper diary, which you can't take out with you. And then you can't commit to things immediately. So you can say, let me come back to you about this. And then you go back home and you see, actually, can I do that? Or do I want to do that later? Or do I want to do it at all? Anyway, I remember when I started coaching, I was available, I think, from about 7 a.m. till 6 p.m, Mondays to Fridays. And I would have all these random clients across my week, and it would just be not at all strategic. And now I'm very clear that I work between 8:30 and 3, and there are blocks of sessions within that time. I normally coach for an hour at a time, and the first session's 2 hours, so it's a bit longer. And I always make sure I've got half an hour between sessions. So it's not, I'm sure I could fit in a lot more, but actually, for me personally, it does take energy to coach and to be really present with people.
Definitely.
And so I find that setup works really well for me. And it gives me, I think also with coaching, so much is important about who we are as people, as coaches. It's not just the skills that we've learned and all the techniques and the different models we know. And so for me personally, it's about making sure I have time for my family, for friends, for people I haven't even met yet, and myself.
Wicked. There's so much there that I want to dive into, but just what you last mentioned, thinking of coaching taking energy. How many sessions do you feel you can have per day before you feel like you're not coaching at the level that you want to be coaching at?
Personally, I'd say 3. Yeah, I've done 4. I think I've done 4. I don't think I've ever gone to 5. 4's okay, but I notice it at that point. I think 3 for me is the most.
Incidentally, that's the same for me. 3 is like close to the boundary, and 4's definitely past it to some degree. I feel I can still coach, still be of value, of service, but definitely 3 feels optimal. I love the half-hour break in between sessions as well. And this radical diary that's so big it can't be carried around. Such that planning only happens at home, in a safe space, in a space where the person sending you the invitation or planning with you isn't there. This is incredible. This is so good.
I'm glad. The radical diary. Maybe this is a whole new niche. Well, I will give credit to my coach, Camilla Mendoza, back in the day. She was the one that suggested it. It's interesting because there's part of me that, I look around and I see people with their, Calendly, and they're all their online diaries and their availability online. And I think, oh gosh, I'd be much more strategic and efficient and helpful to the clients probably if I just had everything online. But honestly, while it does take a little bit more time booking in sessions with people, there's something really lovely about being in charge of my time and when I can do things. It means I can go and do a Pilates session if I want to. It means I can go and get my kids to the doctor. You know, boring, basic things, but actually it means that when I do coach, I'm happy to coach and I'm there and I'm ready to be of service. So yeah, radical diary. That might be the key takeaway from today.
Yeah, I love it. Well done, Camilla, and thank you for giving me that idea. I'm someone who has a calendar on their phone and will be putting in stuff on the fly, but that idea is really gonna sit with me. And yeah, what you just said about the role of the coach beyond the techniques they can use and their skills they have. And yeah, so you're saying you're happiest using your diary in this way, and that's going to make you the most powerful or relaxed coach, perhaps, or the most authentic coach that turns up for your clients. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, I there's two modes often with me. I can be super calm, and my clients often talk about my calmness. And I think my husband would laugh if he saw my testimonials, because he sees this other side of me, which is very efficient, quite stressed sometimes, very do. And so, and that obviously has its benefits, and that can be useful in coaching. And for me personally, I think it's really important that I'm kind of, in that relaxed state when I'm going into a session. So that's one way that helps me do that.
Wicked. And the last thing I wanted to catch from that brilliant overview of your work was this idea of being so flexible for your clients. I can book a session in whenever, or we can coach. We can do walking. We can meet in person in the office. We can meet at my house, at your house. We can meet online. All these different ideas, and that flexibility. We sometimes lie to ourselves and say clients want that flexibility, or we'll be the best coach if we can offer that flexibility. When something I've learned from my coaching is that often it's the opposite, and clients want leadership from us in telling us how we work, in getting a clear and consistent message of this is how I work and how we're going to build a partnership together. Would you say a few words about your journey to that point that sounds like you're also in alignment with at the moment?
Yeah, I think the word you used about leadership it's actually true. I know, clients have said to me that they do see it as a role modeling, that I'm saying I'm available these times. I'm also, and again, I took this from Camilla a bit, actually, saying, if I have session preparation questions people can answer, they are voluntary, they don't have to do them, but I find them to be helpful for people. And I ask them to be with me 24 hours ahead of the session. And the reason for that is obviously it will take me maybe 10, 15 minutes to read them and really think about them. I can squeeze it in before a session, but equally I might not be there just before the session, so that it's giving me that chance to read and take that in a relaxed form. So I think it is about role modeling. And I think for people that work in organizations, often they don't get to choose necessarily how they work and what that's about. And for people that aren't working in organizations, working for themselves, whether that's as, a full-time parent at home through to someone that's working for themselves with their business, often days can just pass by and we don't, and actually to be able to say, no, I'm going to be doing these 3 hours over these 3 days, I'm going to focus on this, I think can be really powerful.
I think a lot of coaches come to that point of setting clear boundaries with clients and being really, showing leadership in those conversations from a position of, I'm doing it for myself, or this is how I'm going to be a self-employed coach, or this is how I'm going to be have a portfolio career, and this is what I need to do for me, and then come to the knowledge of, and this is also what clients most prefer, and generally this is something that clients find valuable later, or at least that's how it happened for me. I think I'm sure some people come to it of, hey, I understand clients want this. And I've heard this being talked about in coaching circles, so it's not a new idea for me. But for me, it definitely came from, I need to do this for myself, and then, and clients really appreciate it.
yeah, I definitely hadn't thought it through when I started. I was just kind of, quite frankly, keen to have clients. And so I was kind of willing to do, whatever. And as you mentioned earlier about not just the time, but how, where you deliver. And so I have been doing most of my work online, actually, even pre-pandemic. And that was partly because I knew, even before I was a mother, I knew I wanted to have kids. So I did it so that I could then be flexible and have a flexible lifestyle. And then for those people that are in London or can get to London, like I offer 1 or 2 sessions in a package in Battersea Park because I love being outdoors in nature. And I find that can be so valuable for people. But it obviously takes time for me to get there and to come back. And so it's just kind of like balancing that out in a package. So yeah, lots to think about. And people do it very different ways. I know people that coach solely in the evening. They might have a full-time job that they're doing and then coaching on that. Or maybe they just do that, or they have kids. So it's not to say my way is the only way, but it's working for me.
Yeah, and thanks for encouraging that nuance. And yeah, showing leadership or reducing your flexibility for clients, it absolutely isn't the only way. And if there's any coach listening that really prioritize or have being flexible for their clients to a serious degree as part of their characteristics as a professional, right on, and full power to you.
Absolutely.
I kind of expected that talking about where coaching happened would come up because you were someone who the idea of coaching outdoors and going for walking coaching I first came across when we worked together at Mo on the training course, and I was looking at your website being, what kind of coach is Kat? And I saw the walking sessions. I was like, whoa, walking sessions. And I remember messaging you on WhatsApp about it. I just a few months ago started my first client walking around Bristol Harbour, which is amazing. I offered it and they were like, yeah, I'd really like that. And it's been going really great. And I'm going to take that into my uni role. It's again, really
cool.
well situated in town.
Yeah.
And again, quite good access to the harbour and maybe some other nice parks actually, and offer that to students because, do you want a blank, fairly drab meeting room, or do you want a Zoom link, or do you want the open air? I think that's a nice decision. And it's funny how I've gone from being like, hey, they just want leadership, they just want you to tell them how it's going to happen, to me being like, but also I really value offering this flexibility. Interesting contradiction there. We're human, we're full of contradictions.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I think I always assume that people will want to take me up on my offers of meeting in the park if they're in London, and some people don't. And that's because actually for them, their flexibility is incredibly important. So being able to just hop on a Zoom call or even onto the phone is more important to them than getting on a bus or a train and getting to the park. So it's important, that we're not assuming things. It's kind of a balance of what we can offer and what works for us and what we enjoy. And then also, having some flexibility for the clients themselves. Yeah.
And it's something listeners of this podcast will hear again and again and again, is us celebrating the uniqueness of how different coaches structure things and encouraging people to find what experiment and create change in the coaching community in their approach. We love that variety, that richness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the Mo community, it's just one of the things I really love about the Mo community is the diversity of people and approaches and ways they're using the coaching skills that have come out of the courses. It always frustrates me when I get LinkedIn requests, kind of telling me people are going to make me this kind of 6-figure business and follow these steps and you'll do it. And I think it's highly rare that people do that actually. And so I think celebrating the different ways that we, essentially do our craft is so important. Yeah.
And I get the LinkedIn, you can make this much per month in less than 3 months with no sales funnel and no website. Oh my, the copy paste, it's real.
Yep, it is.
Cool. So taking a step back from what's happening at the moment or the portfolio career, take us to when you first learned or thought about coaching. So it was actually back in
2010. So we're now 2023. So 13 years ago, I worked for a leadership development charity that was helping to develop aspiring head teachers in challenging schools. It was called Future Leaders. And through that, I got some coaching from a wonderful coach and now good friend of mine called Andrea Barkley. And in part to, help me with my role. And then in part because I told the organization that I was moving to New York. And so I was able to think about that move at the same time. And so that's when I first had coaching and found it incredibly valuable. But in my head, I felt that to be a coach, you had to be in your 50s or 60s. You had to have, lived a really decent chunk of life and had lots of professional experience. So yeah, coaching, me being a coach was never in my mind. And then after those 3 years, I came back to the UK, and I won't go into it here just because of timing. And if people are interested, I talk about it more on a podcast called The Coach's Journey with Robbie Swale about a lung collapse that I had in New York, and how it may have been related to my dad's death 6 months earlier. But basically through those kind of events, which were quite kind of shocks to the system, I came back to the UK and wasn't sure what I was going to do career-wise. And I'd been a fundraising consultant in New York, and I could have, continued that. And I did a few consulting gigs when I got back. But it was actually through a few people that I kind of see as life mentors or guides. They're not official mentors of mine, but just people I respect. So one, Ted Lancaster, who founded one of the charities I worked at many years ago called Interhealth Worldwide. Simon Hampel, who is one of the board members at Mo. Mm-hmm. And I think it was those two at the time. They were saying, have you thought about coaching? And I was like, oh, I'm too old. I think I was 32 at the time. Yeah. And I was like, sorry, I'm not too old. I'm too young. I'm too young to be a coach. And it was Simon that said, just, have a go on this course, go to Mo. And so I looked at the website, and there were no courses in London for a while. So the next one was in Guernsey, and it was the first one they did in Guernsey, actually. And so I hopped over to Guernsey, and was taught by James Wright, Tony Phillips, and Stacey Nimisima. And that Mo course, gosh, I loved it. And I also found it really challenging. I remember the first day. So at the time it was in person, and I think it was a 5-day course, 3 days, and then you had a break, and then 2 days. And the first night that I went back to my B&B, I felt really down because I was like, oh, I'm such a bad listener, because the first day, a lot of it is about listening. And I just realized that I knew how to make quick conversations with people. I knew how to find commonality and have those kind of conversations. But, that deeper type of listening, I was doing. In retrospect, I think I was being a bit harsh to myself, but it wasn't so much a part of my life. So I guess that's when I started really on my coaching journey, was thanks to Simon for kind of signposting Mo to me.
Yeah. And you said you had this coaching experience, or you were receiving coaching. What was it about that experience or your first contact with coaching that made you think, I could be a coach, or I'd like to be a coach?
I think it was both the mix of practical and the doing, and like what I could be doing in my job, and actually thinking about moving to New York. And equally, it was about who I was at the time, and what I was wanting to be, who I was wanting to be, and what may need to shift in order for that to happen. So I really, and I even to this day, that's what I still really enjoy about coaching, is thinking about the being and the doing. And that's something I learned more through the Coactive Training Institute, and their model is all about the being, and active is the doing. And so for me, that's what interested me. Also at the time I was part of my role was to work with what we called leadership development advisors, and they were former or current head teachers, really impressive people. And so I kind of saw what they were learning with the kind of skills that we were teaching them and what they were just doing just naturally through who they were and their experience. And I loved it. But I just thought you just had to be older to do that.
Yeah. So you're admiring these people who had these skills or had learned them. And that combination of being and doing it. I've never heard it described like that, coaching, as the being and the doing. And it feels really poetic and really right.
Yeah, for me, the being side of things has been the most transformational in the last, 7-8 years. Because I've always been good at the doing. I get stuff done. That's throw me something and I'll do it. But the being side of things, like who am I? What do I value? What's important to me? How do I get in my own way? Where am I brilliant? All these pieces felt not exactly alien, but just less familiar, and I wasn't giving time and energy to them.
Yeah. Coming to mind is a conversation I had with a client in a session recently about how they most wanted to use coaching, whether it was around changing how they were being, or maybe slightly more pragmatic and what they were doing in life, or changing, work kind of, and it almost kind of went into a conversation around, is this short-term pragmatism supporting you in going through things, or is this long-term, here's how I want to change how I treat myself, how I think of things. I really like that lens to look at coaching through being and doing.
Yeah, it's something that it's interesting thinking about that short-term, medium-term, long-term, and something that's been incredibly helpful to me ever since I've had kids. Is something a lady called Julie Curry shared with me when I asked her. She seemed to kind of have it all, great job, kids, just seemed to be managing it all very well. I said, do you think it's possible for women to have it all? And she's like, yes, but over a lifetime. And I just loved that. And it's been so valuable to my way of thinking. It doesn't work for everyone, but for me personally, it's been a really helpful way to think. In fact, I've actually bought overalifetime.com. I haven't done anything with it, but there's something about that idea that we don't have to do everything brilliantly all at once. We can take our time with certain things. We can focus on different things. We can kind of dial things up, dial things down. And for me, that's taken away a lot of nervousness or resentment or things like that. Just being like, okay, this is this period of my life, and there will be another period of my life, and there will be another period of my life. And so I think with coaching, what I notice with a number of my clients is yes, there are often things they come with that are particularly in that moment, but actually that concept of over a lifetime is actually very freeing for many of them, and actually then gives them that bigger perspective as they're thinking about the thing that's right in front of them. Yeah,
absolutely. My experience as a coach concurs with that. When we zoom out from the short scale or from small time scales, it often allows us to relax and feel better about what's happening. Yeah. From that, talking about how you come to coaching, this idea of age being in some way relative to coaching ability came up, and I'd love to talk about that. And if I said to you, what does your intuition say when I ask you how much truth from 0 to 100% is there that the older you are, the better you are at coaching? Really putting you on the spot.
I know, and all I'm imagining is like a DJ's, whatever that's called, that switch thing that goes up and down on their deck, and that's what I'm imagining is up and down, right? So I do think there are times when age is useful, especially perhaps in executive coaching, where people might be looking for a coach/mentor, so someone that has been there, done that. So I do think there is, and actually, quite frankly, and depending on what your coaching is, there might be certain things that you just have in your life that might be valuable. But saying that equally, you don't have to have that experience. And so even just thinking back to that Mo course, I remember being coached by Natalie Scully, who at the time was 18, of course. And I was just thinking, and I was being coached on my concern that I was too young to be a coach. And just remember looking up at her and it was just like, Natalie's 18 and she's doing an amazing job. You know, she's brilliant. She's a great listener. She's asking really thought-provoking questions. What am I on about? You know, and it's been interesting. And actually, in the last couple of years, particularly, when I speak to coaches in their 20s and 30s, there's a confidence there, actually, that I don't think I had 10 years ago. And I think society and the coaching industry is shifting, and that's all for the better. So, yeah, in my mind, what it comes down to is really the chemistry between the coach and the client. And that really is the most important thing. Now, that may come in the package of a 20-year-old. It may come in the package of a 75-year-old, somewhere in between. Who knows? But yeah, I don't have a percentage to give you, because I think it does dial up and dial down.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thinking back to a Mo course I was on, I was part of a training team delivering a course, and one of our participants was, again, 18, and living down in Tasmania. And I'm really hoping to get them on the podcast, because I think, we typically, I think there's not enough space for young coaching voices, or maybe they're not the most common voices, and that's really valuable, especially like right on the opposite side of the world. So hopefully that'll happen. But just like you were saying, they were a fantastic coach, and they were applying these models in a really intelligent way and learning about them. And there was no, but it doesn't feel right because they're 18, when I saw other participants being coached by them, or I saw them practicing those techniques. And just like you say, like that, the value in that, sure, like the value in being the stereotype of old and wise, or having a lot of experience, that can be really valuable, just as that innocence of how you look at things, or that freshness of how a younger person might look at things, can be just as valuable. Like you say, I think it really depends on the dynamic between people. And we've got ideas about age in society that might really affect that dynamic. Some people, it wouldn't work to have a young coach, and for some people, it wouldn't work to have an older coach. And yeah, of course, we've come back to this universal coaching truth about the uniqueness of each coaching partnership, about the there's no one universal rule about how coaching should be done, or what makes a powerful coaching partnership. Doesn't surprise me, but we're back here.
And I think also it's interesting to think about who gets coaching as well. And so certainly in more of the organizational world, often, not always, but often that is people further along in their career. And so something I enjoy doing is working with Chloe Garland, who's also a Mo alumni. I think she's been interviewed on the podcast, and she has a company called Quarter Life, and works with people in their 20s and early 30s. And it's really refreshing working with people that are, not necessarily at the start, but kind of, earlier on in their careers, and, their companies are choosing to give them the opportunity to receive coaching. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in 10 years' time, as shifts occur.
Yeah. And coaching courses becoming more accessible, or becoming more common or more popular, I'm sure will further decrease the average age, or the demographic in terms of age. That is really interesting. Yeah.
And saying that, I have a couple of clients in their 70s, and it's brilliant, and I'm the daughter of someone my dad was 57 when I was born, 59 when my brother was born. So yeah, I guess I find age just a kind of, as long as you've got your health, that's the challenge if you don't, but it's a cliche, but age is just a number.
Okay. Brilliant. And going back to the Mo course, talking about going to Guernsey, what happened in your career immediately after you finished the Mo course? Thinking those couple of weeks, or the next month or two.
So I did the course in the summer of 2014 and loved it. And I did actually, I think I started taking on clients, probably had 4 or 5 over the next few months. But I noticed there were 2 things that I remember from that time. One was I really felt nervous saying I was a coach. I just didn't feel like a coach, whatever that. So I was still kind of really questioning what that meant, the identity piece.
Yeah.
And perhaps because, before my education had been, you do a bachelor's degree, it's 3 years, or you do a master's degree, it's a year, and so suddenly after 6 weeks, I'm a coach. It's like, So I had some questions around that. And then the other thing that I remember from that time was Mo did an in-person social in London. And Tony Phillips, who had been one of my trainers in Guernsey, came up to me and he was asking how it's going. And he's like, and I think this was really early on, actually, so I probably hadn't even got any clients at this point. He was like, so when are you going to start charging? And he's like, well, about £20 an hour. And I was just like,
yeah.
And there was part of me that kind of like, I can't do that. And then I was like, actually, no, I should start at £40 an hour. So almost just by that request, he was like getting me A, to charge, and then B, to think about what I wanted to charge. So that was just so valuable, because I think I could have, had I not had that conversation, I might have spent a year or two just faffing around.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful. So yeah, in that period of time, it was just starting to slowly get clients. And then I personally decided to do further training afterwards. So I guess in that period of time, that was probably 4 or 5 months after Mo, I did that.
And was that with Coactive?
Yes. Yeah. So I did a year-long course with them, which was, the first half is in-person modules. And then, I think they're hopefully going to go back to that post-pandemic. I think it's still online at the moment now. And then a 6-month certification program, which was all on the phone, actually. And that was really cool. It was with the teacher was in Britain, and then we had myself and then 3 people in America and 3 people in Dubai. So yeah, it was a good mix of people, and I loved it. And yeah, I think the things that I've taken from that is around, the coactive piece, which I've mentioned. Another thing is values work. So I really find with my clients, helping them to really take time to think about what their personal values are, what is important to them in life, and then using those as ways to make decisions.
Yeah.
And even noticing where they might have 2 values that kind of counteract each other, and then making a choice about which they're going to honor and which they're going to let go of in that scenario, is really powerful. So there's lots I could talk about with that course, but I think there's a couple of things that I still to this day use a lot of.
Brilliant. Yeah, maybe we'll get back to that. I think it would be really interesting for us to hear about the differences between a relatively short course like Mo's 8-session course and a course that takes place over the course of a year. But both are aimed at teaching coaching fundamentals. But I want to get into specifics. Okay. You said you started taking on clients. What was the thing you did to take on clients in that moment?
So immediately after Mo, in those few months, there was no strategy at all. There was so all I did was I spoke to people. When I spoke to people, just in natural conversations, maybe I was meeting up with them, or maybe, I don't know, there was an email, it was very organic. And I mentioned I'd been doing some coaching and I was starting out, and either directly those people or people they knew, were recommended to me. And so that's how that happened. I'd say the kind of most strategic I've been, and I'm not like this anymore, and probably could be more if I wanted more clients, was when I did start with the CTI certification, so that's 6 months in after when I started the course. We had to have 5 paying clients. And I think at that time, those initial clients were kind of coming to an end, or the people I'd taken on initially were starting to wrap up. So I had to start from the beginning. And what I did was I wrote an email, a generic email, about a few lines about my experience pre-coaching. Then what I'd done with Mo, what I was going to be doing with CTI, a couple of testimonials were in there, and then my biography, and I wrote an attached biography. And then I just kind of topped and tailed it so it's personalized for the person. I just asked, I think it was 5 or 6 people, who I know are really good connectors and who I know believe in me, if they knew of people. And through that, I got 11 clients. And yeah, and it was really simple. And yeah, and I quite frankly probably should do that more. For me, my whole business has just been about relationship building and referrals, and it makes it a slower beast. It's taken time, but equally that has suited my stage of life and where I want to be. It won't work for everyone. But yeah, that's really how I proactively got clients.
Yeah. Awesome. And I love that idea of, hey, here's some people who I feel are well connected, who I know believe in me, or I know see me in the way that I want to be seen. That seems like a really intuitively, obviously positive approach.
Yeah. And one thing to add, sorry, I forgot, just with that email, I made an offer. So it was a kind of, I remember exactly, I think it was like 13 and a half, it was a very precise 13 and a half hour package or something. And then I kind of gave the price, and it was just a much lower price than, I would hope to charge in the future, and just said what was involved. So I just made it as easy for people to forward on to other people as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's also helpful. So then it just means, it's not difficult for people to understand what's being offered and how to get in touch with me.
Yeah. And was there any, when you were speaking to those connectors or asking them to forward that email, was there like, I'd like you to send this to this group of people or that group of people? Was there any clarifying there?
That's an interesting question. I actually can't remember if I did that. I'm not sure if I did. I think if you look at my biography, like my background's very much in a non-profit base, so that would be an obvious place to go. But thinking about the people that came to me, they weren't all non-profit people. So I think, and even when I think about my biography now, there are different things that clients that appeal to clients, right? Some will be around the fact that, yes, I've got experience in the non-profit world, but for others it will be that I'm a mum, or that I lived in New York, or, there'll be different bits. So I don't know if I was hugely specific. No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
And fast forwarding back to the present day, how are you currently going about acquiring new clients?
I just wait for them.
Oh, fantastic. The luxury. They come to me.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. And it does make it slower. Like, I mean, as in, like, I'm sure if I sent an email out again, I could get, like, and that's right, it sounds very arrogant, but, like, I'm sure I could just, do that. But yeah, at the moment in my life, because I'm working part-time, and just because I'm lucky that I'm able to do this, financially, that I can work part-time, it means that, I've now got, I guess, enough former clients who can recommend me to people, or just people through Mo, for example, or other organizations I've been involved with, or just friends that will pass me on to other people. Bearing in mind I've been kind of at this for about 8 years now, so, with time you start to, get a better network. But I think, when I think about what I do marketing wise at the moment, I would, in the past couple of years, I've advertised on LinkedIn about the podcast I've been doing. And actually one thing I'm doing at the moment, which I'm quite enjoying, is with the Mondays that I mentioned, I've started to take photos of people that I'm meeting up with. Not everyone, depends on who they are and if they want that, but almost like celebrating people that I find really cool. And so maybe you could argue that's a marketing thing, and maybe like 10% of it is, but actually in general, it's more like just a celebration of getting out there again.
And some people might see it in some way as marketing, but,
exactly.
But that's not how it feels to me. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not your marketing guru, girl, I will say.
I think you might be. What I'm hearing is that the amount of passive referrals or people coming to you for coaching matches the amount of work you want to be doing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. Like I don't feel any nervousness about clients, like getting clients. Like I definitely felt that when I started out. Like wanted to be getting a certain number of clients. And now I'm just like, I kind of trust that I guess I kind of go a bit, more woo-woo here. And I just trust that the universe will be bringing me the right number of people for this particular time in my life. And also, there's part of me that's curious about work beyond or in addition to coaching. So actually, I'm not looking to, I enjoy working the amount I do in coaching. I'm not looking to be fully booked the whole time because I want to have brain space to explore additional things. So.
Yeah, and we spoke about that a little bit off podcast about that transition that's happening. Is that something you'd be comfortable telling us about? Yeah.
So actually, I was speaking to a friend last week from New York. His name's Robert Accordino, and he was this amazing friend and doctor who helped me when my lung collapsed. Anyway, we were talking about coaching and what it was, and he said it's helping people really live deliberately. And I was like, that's a great way, of putting this. And so very deliberately for the last 7 years, essentially, I've been part-time, wanted to be very present for my boys. And that's been wonderful. And they are now coming to an age where in 6 months' time, the youngest will be at school. And so I will suddenly have 5 days, during term time available to myself. And yeah, I just have a sense that I will be coaching as long as I can hear properly. I'll be coaching it, well into my 70s, I'm sure. And I also feel that there are other parts kind of, pulling at my interest. So, and I say this, I have no plan. I have no idea how this will emerge or when or in what form, but I will say the things I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So there's part of me is around, using my voice more. So whether that's sharing ideas more, presenting, interviewing, that kind of piece. I really enjoy researching. I used to want to be a documentary maker, and there's part of me that's still curious about that side of things. And then the other area is around nature and the environment, both getting out more. I live in pretty central London at the moment. And then also, thinking about our kids' futures and what am I doing in that regard. And I guess having my parents, my dad was a conservationist and set up one of the first environmental treaties around the world. And my mum studied swan behavior for 10 years. So I kind of grew up in that world. And I think there's some stuff in me that hasn't come out yet on that front and may get some more attention. So, yeah, I feel that those are the extra strands. There are a few extra strands that might accompany the coaching side, but I can maybe tell you about those in a bit.
Yeah. Amazing. For me, it was always, I'm going to be a radio presenter and miss being a podcast host.
Well, no, but it's a journey, right? So you may well be.
Yeah, definitely something involved in music. Or I'd like there to be something involved in music. I think, with so many coaches, coaching isn't the entirety of their portfolio. And I think we have a duty in sharing coaches' stories to encourage them to share where they are beyond coaching or where their portfolio goes outside of coaching, because often it's really interesting and encouraging seeing how people have configured that with a high degree of agency or pursuing what's really meaningful to them. So thanks for sharing that. Does that research or using your own voice feel like something that would be work related or more kind of personal related?
I think both. Yeah. I think it's interesting with coaching because obviously while it's a dynamic relationship, you are always in service of someone else and their ideas. And I think what I've noticed is actually it's important to also have a way to get your own ideas out. And so then there's a kind of balancing. It's not necessarily in the coaching session itself, but I think so for me, I think it might be work related actually. Not so much my personal, I think I express myself pretty well in my personal life actually. So I guess what I'm talking about is more professional actually. And I've been under the radar for a while. And I don't want to be one of these kind of Instagrammy, kind of like, look at me coaches. That's not the deal. It's just more about, yes, I guess starting to emerge from this period is, again, I've very consciously chosen of being a mum and being, very present to my kids. And I will still hopefully be a very present mum, but it just, I think my energy is shifting.
Yeah. Yeah, your children will their energy or their needs, I'm sure, will shift as well. Shift,
exactly. Oh, I tell you, my 6-year-old should be a coach. Like, he is. No. Whenever I'm feeling a bit stressed, he's like, "Mummy, just smell the flower and blow out the candle." And they teach yoga at his school, and it's amazing. So that's so much more self-aware than I ever was as a child.
Yeah, getting right into the age versus coaching ability.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's 6-year-old. Genuinely true, and actually something I'm really interested. Actually, I think maybe learning more about professionally now is thinking about how we regulate ourselves and our emotions, and how we soothe our nervous system and things like that. At the school my 6-year-old's at, they've been teaching about zones of regulation, and it's very simple idea. So there are 4 different colors, squares. Red, this is very simplistic, but red is like angry, yellow is overstimulated, green is very calm, ready to learn, and blue is a bit sad. And we as a family in the last month or so have been really using this, and it's so helpful. And like now, including my 4-year-old can talk about it as well. So he's like, I'm in the dark red zone, like really angry, or I'm in the dark green zone, I'm beautifully, calm and peaceful. And then I say what mood I'm in. And, it's just suddenly given us a language to share how we are. And I think it's something that I'm kind of curious about coaching wise, as to, what more I can learn on that front with people. And that may be somewhere to look for me.
Yeah, amazing. And it is a huge change that I'm sure is coming in society, emotional fluency. Being able to
absolutely.
Be an emotional awareness. It's all over social media. People are sharing these big ideas that support us to be our best selves, these big emotional ideas that you'd never maybe have expected celebrities to be sharing in newspaper columns 20 years ago. It's definitely happening. It's happening in schools as well. It always shocked me as a teacher how people just 5 to 10 years younger than me, when I was just starting my career, could have such a more progressive perspective, despite not having lived as long as me. But it does continue happening, and it's a change I see. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that impacts coaching. How much will people need coaching if we have a much more emotionally aware and mature demographic, or will that just change the way in which they want to use coaching? Are there going to be loads more coaches, being able to tap into that intuition? And I'd love to hear, you as a really experienced coach, your kids as, learning around that regulation and always learning about communication. Have you given them any coaching tools, whether that's a listening tool, whether that's encouraging them to ask permission before giving an opinion? Have you ever given them any tools or encouraged them to communicate in that way?
Let me think. They're very different characters, my 2 boys. The eldest. Actually, I think with both of them, and quite frankly, because they're still really young, even just having the tool of you kind of do that. I can't show you on the podcast. I'm kind of like moving my hands a little bit near my ears, and you go, and that means time to listen, and that is something that's really important. So, and actually, quite frankly, I think as adults, we probably need tools to be like, okay, person, time to listen. So that's helpful. And then I think. I don't know how it's happened actually, but thinking about it, there is something about listening in our family. I think there's something about a fairness of listening. And so if people don't feel like they're being listened to, they will say it. It's my turn to listen in order. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I haven't explicitly taught them coaching skills. I guess when I pick my eldest, actually when I pick both of them up, I ask them what their favorite thing in the day was. I try and ask them a question that makes them reflect. But then that's kind of enough. And when I've asked more questions, I get pushback. They're like, "Mummy, I don't want to talk about it." So it's kind of, I think at this stage, it's more just judging when good listening is helpful, when a good question, and usually just one, quite frankly, is helpful. And I think that the ability to be there to listen, and it's something I feel quite passionate about with boys, actually, because I want them to be able to express themselves and how they feel. And so I do ask them quite a lot how they feel. And often at night time when I'm putting to bed, that's where you'll get the real, mummy, can I tell you something? And it'll be like towards the end of the day. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm in any thoughtful way imparting my coaching knowledge or skills onto my kids at this point. And I'm also really conscious about close relationships, be that with my kids, my husband, my close friends, family, of not using them in a way that isn't kind of a natural way. So sometimes, I've been challenged.
Absolutely. If
I ask something that's really a thought-provoking question, someone might say, "Oh, stop coaching me."
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's a balance to be had. I'm not walking around constantly being a coach, and I'm definitely not a perfect human being. I am not constantly calm or anything, but I have these tools to hand, which can be helpful.
Yeah. It's such an interesting reflection about kind of parenting and those communication styles. That I completed the Mo course, I noticed my communication changing. And part of that was because I felt like I'd learned better ways to communicate, better techniques to communicate. But I remember my partner at the time would sometimes say to me, stop coaching me or stop using coaching techniques on me. And I was, but I can't help it. It's just it's a better way of talking to you or of listening to you. And I think there's a really interesting nuance there of, how we are coaches and how we're also people, and when and where we consciously or subconsciously let that go or hold on to it. And I don't feel like I understand it to any deep level, but I have an awareness that sometimes it's happening or it's relevant.
I mean, saying that, I read today, I think it was Claire Pedrick, and she was being advertised for a podcast, was saying that 95% of the coach is the person, right? And the rest is skill. So there is something about who you are. And I guess it depends on how you define a coach and how you define yourself as a coach. And I think maybe something for me maybe is just to almost pull in more of who I am as a coach. So I am someone that watches Love Island. I may present as being very thoughtful and intelligent, and I watch that, which has its own, it has its own critiques in many different reasons, and yet for me it relaxes me, and I kind of find it quite fun. And it's, or if you go to parties, people don't necessarily want to be having deep and meaningful. They just want to have a good time and have fun. And so I guess it's kind of how to define oneself as a coach, and whether that is someone that's part of it, who it is, or if it's something we have to wear more thoughtfully. I'm not sure. I don't really know the answer to it, actually.
That's an interesting reflection. I'd like to swerve that question. Apologies.
Okay, no worries.
You said this person presented this idea that it was 90% or 95% who we are when we're coaching, and 5% the skills or the techniques we use. I'd love to hear where you feel that balance lies in the impact you have with your clients. What percentage is it who you are, and who you are to them, and what percentage is it what you do in the session?
It's interesting. I'd almost be interested for you to ask my clients this, because, as to what their perception is, because I am using techniques, there's no doubt about it. And partly, so I'm accredited with the ICF. So there are, standards and ethics around this and ways of doing things, which I do uphold. And there are ways to start a session and ways to, close it, and making sure you're doing certain things. And there are skills that I guess the skills that I draw on, things like, I'll have in mind the coactive model, or I'll have in mind the grow model from Mo, or I'll have in mind different ways of doing things. And I have questions that I know can often elicit really interesting answers up my sleeve. And there'll be different ways of being, whether that's just being with that person, or whether sometimes it's dialing up the energy or dialing down the energy. So there's lots of things to hand, and yet would I as a client know that, you know? Yes, I think you probably would know the beginning and end bit. Yes, I think you'd kind of be aware, she's asking me about my takeaways and my learnings and what I'm going to do or how I'm going to be, you know, that is quite coachy. But in the middle, I guess, particularly, I don't know. I don't know how much is me and just being curious and asking the question, like you're doing with me, right? You know, you have a bit of an agenda, you have some questions, but actually you're riffing off as well, you know, and you're bringing yourself. Well, I know, but that's the thing, right? And that's what, yes, and it'd be interesting what the listeners think.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Of course, yeah.
So I think I've definitely relaxed more into being who I am in my sessions. And I think that's reflected by, you know, people saying that I'm playful or light in the way I do things. I'm quite light in my challenges. They're still there, but they're not in like, you must do this type thing. It's like, you know, what would it be like in the next 3 hours to do X? And I think because, you know, I've had coaching and supervision, I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of all of that as well. So I guess I do it in a way that, whilst I want, you know, and part of my job is to hold people accountable and challenge, there is also, I think, an importance of being kind and compassionate to people as well, you know, because some of this work, depending on what the topic is, can be really hard. And it's brave to even reach out to a coach, let alone start coaching and continuing with coaching. So I'm not really answering your question.
And I'm happy you didn't.
Yeah. I don't think I have an answer.
No, when I asked you a question, I was like, I'm also going to give my thoughts on this, and I should write it down before I hear your answer, out of fairness. I wrote down 70-30, 70% who you are to the client and 30% what you do with the client. But as you were talking and as these ideas developed, I realized you can't be an impactful coach without giving respect to both those parts. And even if you're someone who's particularly inspiring, or the way you are with someone is incredible, if you're not using techniques in a certain way, or you're not applying yourself in a mindful or intelligent or intentional way to support them, it's going to have a far smaller impact. And similarly, if you're this incredibly skilled coach with amazing techniques, but you're unable to be what the client needs you to be with them, again, those techniques aren't going to have the impact. So I feel like it can't just be, oh yeah, you can have this balance, because the two feed into each other so much. And so I'd also, like, out of fairness, I've put my numbers out there, but I'd also happily retract them.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that kind of, I think it's because you mentioned about, you know, music, your love of music and radio and things like that. I really have this like dial, I need to find out what this thing is called, this dialing up, dialing down thing. Yes. Again, like when you asked about the age, you know, it's similar to this. I think sometimes the skills are incredibly important. And sometimes they're less so, and I think that's something I have learned through Coactive, is there's a part of the coaching called process coaching, which is slightly more towards the therapy end. It's not therapy, but it's about how you just with someone. Sometimes in order to get from A to B, you have to kind of go down into the valley or high up in the hill, like really, you know, heightened emotions as well. And it's really asking very simple questions, you know, what's here now, for example, like really, really simple, and just being with them. So, and that's why I think that's what keeps my interest in coaching, is that there's always more to learn, and there's different things to try with different people, and some things work beautifully and some things a bit like, and then, but it gives someone something to push back on, or to say, no, it's not that, it's this, you know? And so it's a very dynamic way of working.
Absolutely. And we love it. And that's a big part of why we love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That feels like such a fitting place to end things. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome everybody to the Mo Podventures, where we do get into some specifics, but on the deep questions, we'll often find that there aren't clear, objective, graspable answers, and we're getting into nuanced musings or considerations to support us. Big thanks to Kat, and I also missed shouting out to Tony, who got mentioned here, who trained so many of the people in the Mo community, having been one of the trainers at Mo for so many years and having run so many training courses. And we'll see you all in next month for another episode. Thank you.
Alex, Kat, could I do a couple of shout outs as well?
Please, yeah.
I mean, I looked up my LinkedIn connections with Mo, through Mo, and I had 121. So I was like, I can't name check everyone. So apologies, I'm not name checking everyone. But I did just want to say thank you to Darren Robson and his family for starting Mo, because so many things for me have come through Mo, both learning to become a trainer, assessor, supervisor, to work opportunities, to the chance to try out climate change coaching events, nature events with Elizabeth Wainwright. So I just think Mo has got such a beautiful openness to give things a chance. And then to Carol Wilson for gifting the course to Mo, because I think that's been an incredibly generous thing to do, and that is impacting so many people. So there's loads more people I could say hi to, and I love you all. But I just wanted to say those two people in particular a big thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. And just for those of you that don't know, Carol Wilson developed a coaching course that Mo uses and gifted it to Mo to use as part of their social good mission as a charity. Awesome. Thank you, and catch you next time.
And that concludes another Mo Podventures. What an episode. I really, really enjoyed the conversation there about how much of yourself is part of the coaching journey. It's definitely something that I'm considering in my current training as well. It would be great to hear your thoughts on what you think makes a coach. How much of a percentage is based upon you as a person? How much is based upon your skills? We love hearing all about different people's perspectives, and we would love to invite anyone that would like to come and join us on the podcast. If you'd like to be a podcast guest, then please do get in touch with one of the team. You could email me at maisie@mofoundation.com. That's MAISIE @mofoundation.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Now, this is a message for anybody who thinks that life coaching might be the right calling for you, but you're not sure how to attract new clients. So on the 17th of April, we will be having our next Mo Digital Academy. Keely Vuong White, the founder of Kia Ora Coaching, is going to be talking to us about how to attract clients as a new life coach, a 90-minute long introduction to marketing. Now, she's had a fantastic life and has spent 15 years in international corporate marketing, and has also learned a thing or two about setting up a business. And she's also done her coaching with the Mo Foundation. So she's going to be running a fantastic workshop. We hope to see you there. If you're interested and you'd like to register, then please find more information on our website. That's mofoundation.com/calendar. Thanks so much, and we will see you there.